மனித நேயம் என்றால் என்ன?
சாதிகளை கடந்து மதங்களை கடந்து சக மனிதனை உறவாக எண்ணுகின்ற சிந்தனைதான் மனிதநேயம்.
Manithaneyam, a humanitarian attitude combined with selfless service provided to one and all, irrespective of religion, caste and creed. This is known as Manithaneyam.
அன்பு, பாசம், நேசம், பரிவு, கருணை, இரக்கம், அர்ப்பணிப்பு வாழ்க்கை, பிறர் துன்பம் போக்குதல், பிறர் தவறை மன்னித்தல், பிரதிபலன் பாராமல் உதவி செய்தல், தன்னைப் போல் பிறரையும் நினைப்பது, தேவைப்படுவோரின் தேவை அறிந்து தேடிப் போய் உதவி செய்தல், இவை அனைத்தும் மனித நேயத்தின் வடிவங்கள்.
The patterns of Manithaneyam are love, affection, friendship, compassion, mercy, kindness, dedicated life, relieving the suffering of others, forgiveness of the mistakes that others make, helping regardless of the response, thinking of others like oneself, helping those in need with understanding and dedication. Today we're going to be covering a subject that people have been studying since civilization existed. The universe is defined as a vast, endless space which includes galaxies, stars, planets, and other forms of matter and energy in it. We are going to be looking at the origin of the universe. The most common theory regarding the origin of the universe is the Big Bang theory. This is, of course, the most popular argument in science today. Or its concept of steady state. It is considered through this concept that the universe is roughly the same size at any point of time. So thus, looking at the Big Bang theory, we are now going to move on into something known as the nebular hypothesis. This gives rise to various different descriptions of what exists in the universe today. For example, a galaxy. What are the different units of measuring distance in the universe? It is also called the pole star, constellations. These objects are called black holes. The solar system. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune. Mercury, Venus. Leaving the Earth, moving aside to the planet that is most explored at this current time, Mars. Mars is also known as the red planet, as it's a dusty and cold world with a very thin atmosphere. It is reddish in color due to the presence of iron oxide on its surface. Mars is the fourth planet from the Sun and the second smallest planet of our solar system. Mars is currently the most widely searched planet for life, inspiring many works of fiction, both on books as well as film. The first person to observe Mars with the use of a telescope was Galileo Galilei. He observed the red planet in 1610. Mars is 227.9 million kilometers which is 141.6 million miles away from the Sun. Light from the surface of the Sun reaches Mars in about 13 minutes, as opposed to the 8 minutes it takes to reach Earth. Mars is around 2 times smaller than Earth, and it has a diameter of 6,779 kilometers, or 4,212 miles. Mars is around 10 times less massive as opposed to Earth's size. Mars is the outermost terrestrial planet outside of Earth's orbit and is 50% further away from the Sun than Earth is. Mars has 2 known natural satellites, Phobos and Deimos. Phobos is predicted to suffer a collision with Mars in the distant future. The atmosphere of Mars is very thin and mostly comprised of carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and argon gases. The tallest volcano or mountain in the solar system is located on Mars, and it's named Olympus Mons, which seems to have a height of around 21 kilometers or 13 miles. Mars also has the biggest canyon in the solar system. It is named Valles Marineris, which is 4,000 kilometers or 2,500 miles long and reaches a depth of up to 7 kilometers or 4 miles deep. The Grand Canyon on Earth is only 446 kilometers or 226 miles long, with a depth of only 1.6 kilometers. Mars doesn't have a magnetic field. However, some areas are highly magnetized. The average temperatures on Mars reaches minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 60 degrees Celsius. Let us leave Mars and move to the next planet in our solar system, Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet named after the supreme Roman god of the same name. To the ancient Greeks, he was known as Zeus, ruler of the Greek gods Mount Olympus and god of lightning. It is the largest planet in the solar system. Jupiter is a massive planet and is twice the size of all other planets in the solar system combined, and is made up primarily of condensed gases. Therefore, it's known as the giant gas planet. It has century-old storms that have been raging for longer than the Earth has existed. Jupiter is the 5th planet from the Sun and the biggest planet in our solar system. Some consider it as a failed star since it was made out of swirling gases and liquids such as 90% hydrogen and 10% helium. Very similar to the Sun, however, never ignited. Jupiter is the 4th brightest object in the sky and one of the 5 visible planets other than Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Saturn. The envelope of gases or atmosphere surrounding Jupiter is the largest planetary atmosphere in the solar system. It makes up almost the entire planet. Basically, it doesn't have a true surface, with its atmosphere reaching altitudes of over 5,000 kilometers or 1,864 miles. Through the observations of Jupiter, the discovery of the 4 Galilean moons ended the belief that everything revolved around the Earth. Jupiter has a total of 67 confirmed moons, and it is second only to Saturn when it comes to the total amount of satellites. Jupiter also has a 3-ring system, which is much smaller than Saturn's. And a diameter at its equator around 142,984 kilometers or 88,846 miles. And a diameter at the poles of 133,708 kilometers or 83,082 miles. As we know, Jupiter's mass is almost twice that of all of our solar system's planets combined. It is 318 times more massive than our planet Earth. Jupiter is on average about 5.2 astronomical units away or AU away from the Sun. Because of its size, Jupiter experiences 200 times more asteroid and comet impacts than Earth. In a way, Jupiter is the solar system's vacuum cleaner because its powerful gravitational pull attracts many of the comets and asteroids and make it harder to thus hit other planets. Though they can be seen only through ultraviolet light, Jupiter's auroras are the brightest in the solar system. Jupiter has a mean radius of 69,911 kilometers or 43,440 miles. Leaving one of the largest gaseous planets aside, we move on to another gaseous planet, Saturn. The planet Saturn is named after the Roman god of agriculture. In Greek mythology, he is known as Kronos, father of Zeus. And here's a fun fact. Saturn is the root for the English language word for Saturday. It is the only planet in our solar system where the average density is less than water. Titan is Saturn's largest moon and the second largest after Ganymede of Jupiter. It is the only moon in the solar system with clouds and a dense planet-like atmosphere. Saturn is the 6th planet from the Sun with the largest planetary rings in our entire solar system. It is the second largest planet in the solar system after Jupiter. Saturn has a radius of 58,232 kilometers or 36,183 miles with a diameter of 120,536 kilometers or 74,897 miles. The surface area of Saturn is 83 times greater than that of Earth. Saturn is the king of moons, having a total of 82 confirmed moons, and there are more probably out there. The largest moon of Saturn is named Triton, and it is the second largest moon in the solar system after Jupiter's moon Ganymede. Triton is much larger than even the planet Mercury. Periodic storms are very often and persistent in Saturn, and they are large enough to be seen on Earth, and they're called white spots. Saturn doesn't have a solid surface. It is enveloped in swirling gases and liquids the further down you go. It is possible that Saturn may have a core, but it would be at least twice the size of Earth, and it would be comprised of metals like iron and nickel. The temperature on Saturn's upper atmosphere is on average around minus 175 degrees Celsius or minus 285 degrees Fahrenheit. This is quite cold for a gas giant at least. However, below its clouds, it gets considerably hotter. Saturn has the lowest density of all planets. It is lighter than water, and if anything were to be placed on it, it would probably float. The low density of Saturn is attributed to its composition, since the planet is largely made up of gases such as hydrogen and helium. Saturn's composition together with its atmosphere influences its color, giving it a brownish yellow appearance. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. Planets orbit around the Sun in an elliptical path. The point closest, perihelion, is the Sun, and the furthest away, aphelion, from the Sun. Apart from our planets, we have recently discovered many other planets. These planets were termed as dwarf planets. Apart from our 8 defined planets, we also can look at something called dwarf planets. Pluto used to be considered one of the planets in our solar system, but is today considered a dwarf planet. Any celestial body orbiting around the Sun, weighing itself down with gravity and nearly a round shape, is defined as a dwarf planet. Examples other than Pluto is Ceres and Eris. Many bodies circulate a few planets around our solar system. Our Earth has its own. It's called the Moon. It's also known as a satellite. Satellites move around a planet from east to west. They do not have their own light but reflect light from the sun. They have no atmosphere and no water. The Moon is Earth's natural satellite. The Moon moves around the Earth for 27 days. It takes exactly the same time every time to complete one spin or cycle. As a result, only one side of the Moon is continuously visible to the Earth. Apart from the celestial bodies that revolve around a planet due to its gravity, certain large masses have been traveling around space and the universe for millennia or billions of years. These are called asteroids. Sometimes these moving objects stop in limbo and circulate around the gravity of a sun. These are called stagnant asteroids. A collection of these asteroids then form what is known as an asteroid belt. One such belt can be found between the planets of Mars and Jupiter. When an asteroid collides with a planet, a huge crater is formed on the surface of that planet. Many asteroids have collided with Earth in its past and creation. There are multiple asteroids that can still be studied and looked at today on our planet Earth. For example, the Lonar Lake in Maharashtra. Continuous moving asteroids form what is known as a comet. Unlike other small bodies in the solar system, comets have been known since antiquity, and many civilizations have recorded their path across the universe. There are many Chinese records of the comet Halley going back to at least 240 BC. The famous Bayeux Tapestry, which commemorates the Norman conquest of England in 1066, depicts an apparition of the comet Halley. By far the most famous comet is the comet Halley, but SL9, which is another big hit for a week in the summer of 1994, dethroned her, if just for a little while. A meteor shower sometimes occurs when Earth passes through the orbit of a comet. Some occur with great regularity. These are also known as shooting stars. The Perseid meteor shower happens once every year. Between August 9th and 13th, when the Earth passes through the orbit of the comet Swift Turtle. The comet Halley is the source of the Ornite shower in October. Comets are actually snowballs made up of frozen gas, rock, and dust that orbit the sun. and as they get closer, they heat up and leave a trail of glowing dust and gases. Comet is also the heavenly body located on the outermost part of our solar system. They are made up of small ice particles and meteoric fragments. As the comet approaches the sun, it develops a long glowing tail as these ignite. Comets are sometimes called dirty snowballs or icy mud balls, as they are a mixture of ices, both water and frozen gases, and dust particles that for some reason didn't get incorporated into planets when the solar system was formed. While we are on the topic of comets, we must look at another study known as meteoroids. Meteoroids are lumps of rock and iron that orbit the sun, just as planets do, asteroids and comets as well. Meteoroids, especially the tiny particles called micrometeoroids, are extremely common throughout our solar system. They orbit the sun among the rocky inner planets as well as the gas giants that make up the outer planets. A meteoroid comet or asteroid enters Earth's atmosphere at a speed typically in excess of 20 kilometers per second or 72,000 kilometers per hour, which is 45,000 miles per hour. The aerodynamic heating of that object produces a streak of light both from the glowing object and the trail of evolving particles that it leaves behind it. This phenomenon is called a meteor or shooting star. A series of many meteors appearing seconds or minutes apart and originating from the same fixed point is called a meteor shower. A meteorite is the remains of a meteoroid that has survived the ablation of its surface material during its passage through the atmosphere as a meteor and has impacted the ground. An estimated 25 million meteoroids, micrometeoroids, and other space debris enters Earth's atmosphere each day, which results in an estimated 15,000 tons of any meteorite material entering our atmosphere on each given year. The Constitution and historical background, the precursors to Indian Constitution, our rule by the British Empire. British traders landed on the shores of India in 1600 AD. In 1765, with the acquisition of the Diwani rights over Bihar, Bengal and Odisha, the British emerged as a political entity in the Indian landscape. The administration of British territories in India was carried out by the British East India Company till 1857. In 1858, the administration was taken over by the British government under the Crown directly in the wake of the Great Revolt of 1857. For the purpose of efficient administration, both the company and the British government had passed numerous regulations and acts that shaped the constitution of independent India today. Let's begin with the Regulating Act of 1773. The significance of this act is that it paved the way for the political unification of India with the introduction of a central administration. The key features of this act involved the Governor of Bengal being made the Governor General of Bengal. To assist the Governor General in the administration processes, an executive council consisting of 4 members was constituted. The governors of Madras and Bombay Presidency were made subordinates to the Governor General of Bengal. It provided for the establishment of a Supreme Court at Calcutta with 1 Chief Justice and 3 other judges. The company employees were prohibited from engaging in private trade. The Court of Directors, who were running the management of the company at that time, were required to submit reports on the revenue, military and civil administration of India to the British government directly. Further involvements by the government and various other politicians and administrators led to the Pitt's Act of 1784. The significance of this act is that the administration of India was brought under the control of the British government directly with the introduction of the system of a double government. The key features of this act were that the territories of the Company of India were called British provinces. A board of control was instituted to look after the civil and military administration in India. The Court of Directors of the company were restricted to administering only the commercial activities within India and its territories. This led to the Charter Act of 1833. The significance of this act is that with the enactment of it, the centralization of the administration in India had reached its peak. Through this act, the Governor General of Bengal was made the Governor General of India. The legislative powers of the Governor of Madras and Bombay were terminated. The commercial monopoly of the British East India Company in India as an independent agency had come to an end. For the selection of civil servants chosen by the British government, open competition was introduced. Thus, the British East India Company lost its power to appoint civil servants to carry out the administration of its actions in India. This further led to more clarification of the Charter Act of 1853. The significance of this act was that it introduced the principle of separation of powers for the first time in India. It provided for the addition of 6 members to the Governor General's Executive Council for the purpose of lawmaking. Thus, the system of parliamentary government was introduced in India. Indians were also allowed to compete along with Britishers for the offices of civil servants. The system of local government was now introduced. Upon successful execution of this act, the new Act or Government of India Act of 1858 had come into accordance. The very significant fact of this act was that the administration of British possessions or properties owned by the British East India Company in India was now transferred directly under the Crown. The British East India Company had lost all political and administrative roles in India. The office of the Governor-General of India was now replaced by that of a Viceroy and proclaimed ruler of India. The system of double government was now abolished. The Board of Control was replaced with a Secretary of State, who was a member of the cabinet and was responsible for all British administration within India. To assist the Secretary of State in the administration of India, a council consisting of 15 members were introduced. The Indian Councils Act had a significance which provided for the association of Indians in the administration of British rule for the first time. The Legislative Council at the centre was expanded and some Indians were added to the council as non-officials. The processes of decentralization of administration started with this act. The legislative powers of governors of Madras and Bombay were restored. The Viceroy was now authorized to issue ordinances. A portfolio system was now introduced and the members of the council were made in charge of various ministries and departments. Indian Councils Act of 1892. This act introduced an indirect and extremely limited form of election within the country. The number of non-officials in the council had been increased. However, the official majority was maintained. The legislative councils were allowed to discuss budgets and ask questions to the executives. The Viceroy was authorized to nominate some members who were recommended by the provincial legislative councils to the Central Legislative Council. Morley-Minto Reforms of 1909. This act enabled for the first time Indians to associate themselves with executive councils of viceroys and governors. The act provided for the first expansion of both central and provincial legislative councils. The Legislative Council were allowed to move resolutions on budgets and also to ask for supplementary questions to the executive. The system of separate electorate was introduced to Muslims. Upon further dilution and scrutiny, the Government of India Act was enabled in 1919. This act promised the gradual introduction of responsible government ruling in India. The subjects of this legislation were divided between the central and provincial legislative councils. In the provinces, the subject of legislation were further divided into transferred and reserved subjects. This was known as a diarchy. The subjects in the reserved list were administered by ministers from the Executive Council, and they were then responsible for all legislative councils. Bicameralism was introduced to the central legislature. Direct election was introduced for the first time. Separate electorates were extended to Sikhs, Indian Christians, Europeans, and Anglo-Indians. For the recruitment of personnel to central public services, a Central Public Service Commission was established. The provincial legislative councils were authorized to enact on all provincial budgets. The Government of India Act of 1935 was a significant act that provided for complete decentralization of all administrations. The subjects of legislation were divided into three lists, such as the federal list, the provincial list, and the concurrent list. Diarchy was abolished in the provinces and introduced into the central legislature. Separate electorates were extended to women, working class, and depressed classes. It provided for the establishment of federal public service commissions, provincial public service commissions, and joint public service commissions. The governor of provinces was required to act on the advice of the ministers, and the ministers were in turn made responsible for all legislative councils. And finally, the last act by the British government, the Indian Independence Act of 1947. It declared India to be an independent and sovereign country. Two dominions, India and Pakistan, were created and established. The office of Viceroy was then replaced with the office of Governor General. The British paramountcy over the princely states came to an end. The Governor General of India and the British governors of the provinces were required to act on the advice of the Council of Ministers. A Constituent Assembly was formed to frame the Constitution of independent India. This then led to the Constituent Assembly. So let's take a look at it. The first meeting of the Constituent Assembly was held on December 9, 1946. Dr. Sanchidan Sinha, elected as temporary President of the Constituent Assembly on December 11, 1946. Dr. Rajendra Prasad and H.C. Mukherjee were elected as President and Vice President of the Assembly respectively. Committees of Constituent Assemblies. The drafting committee had voted Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. The Rules of Procedure Committee had elected Dr. Rajendra Prasad. The Provincial Constituent Committee, Sardar Patel. Union Powers Committee, Jawaharlal Nehru. Order of Business Committee, Dr. K. M. Munshi. And the House Committee, B. Pattabhi Sitaramaiah. The drafting committee, set up on August 29, 1947, consisted of 7 members: Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Dr. Gopalaswamy Iyengar, Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, Syed Muhammad Sadullah, Dr. K. M. Munshi, T. T. Krishnamachari, and D. P. Kaitan. Salient features of the Indian Constitution had then been put into place. The members of the Constituent Assembly were aware of the uniqueness of Indian society and thus meticulously crafted a constitution that accommodates the interests of every section of the Indian society, following the salient features of the Indian Constitution. Lengthiest written constitution. The Indian Constitution, unlike the British Constitution, does not contain only the basic principles of governance. It provides an elaborate provision detailing the administrative procedures as well as reasons for being the lengthiest constitution, such as geographical factors. The vastness of the territory of India creates geographical, social, and cultural diversities between different regions of the nation. Historical factors. The Government of India Act of 1935, which was a bulky document, had considerable influence in the Constitution of India. Composition of Constituent Assemblies. The Constituent Assembly was dominated by members from legal backgrounds. Single Constitution. A single constitution was made for the entire country that accommodates the wide range of regional and socio-cultural diversities. Sources of the Indian Constitution. Many principles and ideas incorporated in the Indian Constitution were inspired from the constitutions of various countries, such as principles were modified according to the needs of the Indian society and then incorporated into the Constitution. From Australia, we had been inspired by concurrent lists, language of preamble, and provisions related to trade, commerce, and intercourse. From Canada, federal with unitary bias, distribution of powers between centre and states, and residuary powers from the centre. From Ireland, Directive Principle of State Policy, DTSP, election of presidents, nomination of ministers of parliament to Rajya Sabha. From Japan, the procedure of establishment by law. From the USSR, now known as Russia, fundamental duties and 5-year plans. From the United Kingdom, nominal head of state, parliamentary system, cabinet system, bicameralism, speaker to Lok Sabha, council of ministers, and a more powerful Lok Sabha. From the United States of America, preamble fundamental rights, independence of judiciary, removal of judges of high courts and supreme courts, judicial reviews, function of president and vice president, and a written constitution. From Germany, suspension of FRs during emergency. Ecology and ecosystems. Learning outcomes. In this unit, you will be able to learn the following: the concept of ecology, ecosystems, and its related phenomena. Introduction to ecology and ecosystems. Our living world is fascinatingly diverse and amazingly complex. The term ecology was first coined by the German biologist Ernst Haeckel in 1869. Haeckel defined ecology as the study of natural environment, including the relations of organisms to one another in their surroundings. Organisms interact with one another, with their environment in a number of ways. These fundamental interactions among organisms and their non-living physiochemical environment constitute an interrelating and interdependent, ever-changing system known as an ecological system upon the population to which it must adjust. Organisms which are unable to adjust to the changed environments disappear ultimately. In an ecosystem has a purpose. As a result, the loss of one species can vastly alter both the size and stability of entire ecosystems.